Welcome to Beyond the Den. In today's episode, we're featuring the Weatherman, a standout strategist in the Wolf Game community. Known for his analytical approach and relentless daily grind, he's a master at navigating the game's complexities. The Weatherman brings a unique blend of late-game entry experience and a data-driven mindset to the Farmhands Council. Join us as we delve into how his education and keen analysis are shaping a new vision for Wolf Game's future. Get set for an episode packed with insights from a player who truly lives and breathes the game. What is up, Weatherman?
Hey, Dio, it's good to be here. Thanks for that intro. That was amazing, dude.
I always have fun writing those. You know, it's like I'm doing
great.
research on everybody, and I'm like, okay, this could be clever. Just trying to make it fun and engaging, right? So,
That's awesome.
for sure. So, Weatherman, as an introvert stepping into the spotlight on the show,
hmm
why are you running for the Farmhands Council, and what unique perspective do you bring?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is I am introverted and that's fine, but I just have played this game so much and I I absolutely love it and I absolutely hate it at times. And but I can't stop playing it. And I just keep coming back and I find new reasons to get involved and new data perspectives to look at
hmm
as I move through like every week, even like there's new things that I'm thinking about, and and in people's DMs, every
Sure.
day, like being like, "Have you thought of this thing? Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna try that." And so I'm very experimental as well in my approach to playing the game. And I guess right now it's not like really for me about economic dominance yet. Like, I'm still like not really trying to figure out the ins and outs of the game. I've figured a lot of that out, but I'm still trying to at times experiment and figure out like what happens if I do this particular thing to the game,
hmm
and can I have that big of an impact? So I think, so for me, like being on the Farmhand Council, I have that unique perspective that I've been really data driven and experimental driven through all of these last 10 plus months in playing the game. Like I haven't let up at all. And I've tracked a lot of different data points to make assumptions about the game that have generally come true. I mean, I've been in Discord a ton saying what's going to happen, and it often happens. And it's not just guessing; it's because you see these trends and these patterns playing out. And I think a lot of it just comes down to human nature. So I think my point in being on the council is I think I'll have a lot to offer in helping them understand what is going to happen to the game as they implement these new things. And so
Mm.
where the game might trend and what patterns might develop with any new pieces they add.
Yeah, that's a great answer and a very useful skill set to bring to the council. You have a background in analytics, right?
Not so much analytics. I do have a background in computer science. I was a software engineer for a time. I've also run a pretty successful like e-commerce business and was pretty data driven during
hmm
that time. So I think that's where a lot of it really started for me.
Sure. What's the most fascinating thing about Wolf Game? I know it's a pretty broad question, right? There are a lot of fascinating things, but anything that pops out at you, or like things that you've been tracking that you're like, this is just crazy.
Oh, definitely. Like, I think lately, the things that are most fascinating to me are understanding that there are levers in the game that will completely bring the game to a halt in terms of player activity,
Hmm.
right? And those are the things I'm like most interested in lately in understanding how the team is going to respond to those kind of things if they actually play out,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of these things would take very few players to be aware of to make it happen, basically.
hmm Any specific examples that you can give?
I could give examples, but I'm not sure that's like the right way to go about this because I, as much as I want to see some of these things happen, and I'm not sure it's like the right approach to like throw it out there and say, "Hey, if you guys want to break the game, this is how you do it right now."
Mm-hmm.
Or
Yeah.
if you want to like make it so painful for players. I mean, I've mentioned some of it in chat before, like,
Yep.
it's not particularly like auto loot, for instance. Like I know you, I think you got auto looted the other day, and that was kind of funny. But um, that it's that perspective that we just don't have as many players playing the game, especially on the wolf end side of things. And if these wolves really start playing the game with the decrease in the wolf bath prices lately,
Mm-hmm.
like, I mean, they can really wreak havoc on sheep right now.
Mm-hmm.
And almost to the point where it doesn't make it playable for sheep who don't have structures to recharge.
Mm. Interesting.
So, yeah, I mean, so there's just like things like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's wild. And how long do you feel that's been going on?
um, I would say like that particular issue really came in with the removal of the burns,
Hmm.
because it made the wolf loots a lot more practical and
Mm-hmm.
profitable, really.
Mm-hmm.
So it engaged the wolf player base more than it has been in a long time, and that's fine. Like the game is going to have balance issues at times, and
Yeah.
I don't. I almost wonder too because one of the things that Goose said is there going to be opportunities for sort of arbitrage, right?
Sure. Yep.
And so that to me that is almost like one of those things where the balance just tipped one direction towards wolves all of a sudden, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. The
Yeah,
way I look at that too, for sure, is that I mean it is called Wolf Game, right?
yeah, absolutely.
And I know that there's a lot of wolf holders that feel slighted or felt like they were promised whatever, right? So and wolves are painfully cheap at the moment. So, yeah, taking advantage of these arbitrage situations, right, where I got looted yesterday for 16 chops, and I'm
Yeah,
like, what the fuck? This is ridiculous. But when you do, in trading alts, in his on his side, in the sense of like, nobody likes to get looted, right? So you
no,
fuck,
no,
fuck
it's
him,
it's
whatever.
like
Yeah,
yeah, like the
yeah,
cortisone levels like ramp up and you're like
yeah, yeah.
pissed off and like ready to go to battle.
Right, right. But I also think, which he brought up a good point. He's just playing the meta right now, and
Yeah,
that's just how the game is unfolding. So I
yes,
think if
yeah,
people do take things personal, obviously, I think that's a their own insecurity coming out, and I think we can all be guilty of that. But
absolutely. I've been guilty of that for sure. I mean, you go back and see some of my Discord messages and I get pretty heated about
yeah,
certain things.
you're not a stranger to getting raided, right?
No, no, yeah. I so do you want the numbers on this? I actually just did them yesterday.
Sure.
So I've attempted 26 breeds
Mm-hmm.
over the course of the 10 months, and I've had 15 of them are like normal breeds.
Okay.
And so I've
So,
had
yeah.
8 survivors and then a few that just ended up getting crushed for chops. And they were like
Mm.
really low chops amounts, like 60 chops or something like.
Yeah, where you're like,
So just
what
like
does somebody have
silly,
a
like,
vendetta
yeah,
against me? Yeah,
yeah. Um,
sure.
so that was like that's been my rating experience. So, I mean, if you think about it, I don't know what it is, like 15 out of 26. So that's, 11 raids in 26 breeds.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
that's
Which is
almost what,
interesting.
40% or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. And you feel like at times I'm sure you're playing with like children because you're like that doesn't make any sense to do that. Like why are you doing that? So you almost feel like you're getting picked on at that point. And and that is, I could sympathize with you for sure. I mean, I would
Yeah,
too. It's
yeah,
like you're like this at this point, it doesn't even make sense to be doing this. I have the data right here. Why would you do this? Like if it made sense and you just were sleeping, then it's I think it's on you. But yeah, to have that, it's
absolutely.
interesting. Yeah, for sure. So do you
I
know
did
who
get, I did,
rated you?
yeah, I do keep track of it. And yeah, I keep track of it.
You got your
So,
kill list. You like
well,
Billy
it's
Madison.
hard. Yeah, it's like hard though because, like there's only so many things you can do in this game and I don't have any wolves, so there's not like a really strong retaliation for somebody like me.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
if I do decide to retaliate in some way, like it's gonna basically take everything I have, and then I'm not playing the game, going towards economic dominance. I'm just playing a
Sure.
revenge game.
Yeah, and then you're playing into them, right? You're
Yeah, exactly.
you're chasing the next shiny thing and not staying true to
Yeah,
your strategy. Yeah.
and I think that's kind of where it does help to have some friends in the game where you can
Yeah.
ask for a little assistance at times, and I
Sure.
have done that at times, and it's definitely the way to go. And
Yeah.
so I mean I've made a few pretty good friends and people I DM with basically every day at this point. So
Sure. Yeah, it's smart. So you were a late entry into Wolf Game. Can you tell us a little story about how you got involved?
oh yeah, like I mean I knew about Wolf Game from day one because I mean you obviously know who Terminatus is. He's getting married here, and everybody's excited about that. Shout out to
Hmm.
him. But we were actually friends before Wolf Game even started, because we had worked on this other project together.
Okay.
Who I don't know if you would want me to mention it, so I won't mention it. But there is another project, or there was another project out there that we collaborated on together,
Huh.
um, for the meme value of things.
Cool.
Um, and and so we had sort of a working relationship, and so we kind of like cut our teeth on NFTs together, I would say.
Yeah.
And we were both into different projects, and certain projects we shared basically. And I think at the time that Wolf Game came out, I was kind of like spent funds wise, so I
Yeah.
wasn't able to get in. And so I was kind of watching him from the sidelines as he went through the early first game and then the exploit.
Hmm.
Um, and then I think it was risky pouches and I mean we have DMs going back all through these different various things.
Hmm.
And then I think what caught my attention was when he was playing Cave Game. Um, and I think that's where I really started to go, oh man, I got to figure out a way to shift some things around and start to get involved in this because this is now getting into territory that feels like my kind of game.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and so I didn't actually get in Cave Game. I got in after. So I kind of caught some of that end of alpha game.
Sure.
So as a player, I came in, I would say kind of late, and I was rewarded just a little bit for alpha game. But everything I've gotten from Wolf Game has basically been bought.
Hmm. Yeah. And grinded, right?
Yeah, or grinded through Valley over the last 10 months. Yep.
Yeah. So you would, I mean, you're not a small holder, right? Because you've worked your way to
No.
grinding but obviously everybody starts as a small holder. What are your thoughts for the small holders out there right now that just feel like the chips are stacked up against them and why would they join a game where it's just a whale game and is this Farmhands Council just going to be a bunch
Sorry,
of
I
whales?
can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Can you repeat? I cut it. Yeah, it just cut
No,
out
that's
on me.
okay. Yeah, all good. So I'm saying like,
I don't know why. I don't know what's going on with the with the internet here.
yeah, it's all good. I can
Okay,
just I'll edit this stuff out too, so that's fine.
sounds
Um,
good. Yeah.
but yeah, so looking at knowing, and it seems like you've have a big heart for the small holders out there, right? I mean, it's um,
Yeah.
what would you say to them who are saying to themselves, listen, I have no shot in this game. Like, why even play it? This is ridiculous. Or for onboarding the new players coming into what they may think is a whales game.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that is the toughest sell right now for the game and in its current state. And like as we were talking earlier about the um, the removal of the wool burns and
Hmm.
how the wolves have come back to power now, it is becoming really difficult for sort of that single sheep holder, or that holder that just has a few sheep, like no
Yep.
structures, to play the game. um, and we could see definitely a lot more pain for them before it gets better. And that's one of the driving factors of like figuring out like how long are we going to play the game in its current iteration. Because right now it's really not suited to someone that only has that type of a bag.
Hmm. Yeah, you're right,
So I do feel
for
I
sure.
feel I feel for them, and I know it's difficult because I look at the numbers every day and I figure out like what is that breaking point,
Hmm.
where it no longer becomes worth sheep collecting resources,
Yeah.
you know. Um,
Yeah.
that's a tough thing to swallow.
Sure. So what do you think? I mean, obviously there's a few low-hanging fruit, right, that we can fix to change that. What would be maybe your first two to three items if you were to get into Farmhands Council to kind of to address?
You know, I I guess my perspective on Farmhand Council is maybe that, from what I understand, we won't have that kind of a power, right? So the way I look at it is I'm trying to be more open-minded. Like, sure, there are things we could fix,
Hmm.
but and I could make suggestions, but that doesn't mean I'll be right.
Hmm.
I'm more interested in what is the team working on right now, and is that going to work for our player base that currently exists, and for the player base that we want to exist coming into the game,
Yeah.
right? And
Sure.
and I think that's really where more my focus is. So um, I think
Yeah.
coming in with not really trying to have expectations, and understanding that what I bring to it is not, it will be ideas at times, right? But I think those ideas will be reactive to what the team is bringing
Hmm.
versus, oh, here's a random idea that I had. Like, we should do this.
Sure. Yeah.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think because of your background in it, I say you don't necessarily say it's analytics, but I just think your mind with a software engineer background, you can't shut that off, right? That's just how your brain thinks. So being able to be given some ideas, and then you need time to figure it out, right, on your own, and to make sure, or crunch the numbers, or do whatever needs to be done on your end to really understand what's going to happen, right?
Yeah, that's basically what my perspective would be is, if I get on the Farmhand Council, it's getting the feedback, or receiving whatever the team gives to us for
Yep.
information, and then building either models or whatever it is that I think is the right choice to figure out how is this going to affect, holders that are, mostly wool. How is it going to affect balanced bags? How is it going to affect that one or two sheep holder with no structures? Like,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
understanding, like, so, because I think at the end of the day, as we move forward, and even thinking about like the future, like, no matter what, we need more players, right? And the game
Mm-hmm.
is going to have to be appealing to new players coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Truth.
so you're right. Like, I'm really going to be looking at like, okay, this is the information. This is what the team's working on. Now, how is this going to affect the
Yeah.
game?
Yeah.
Like, what do I think is going to happen? Like, what patterns do I think are going to play out, and trends in the meta?
Yeah.
So,
And I
and
could
kind of be ahead of that.
sure. Would you
Yeah.
say, so your name, the Weatherman, is that
Hmm.
kind of where that came from? Just the ability to see ahead?
No, actually. So the Weatherman came from, there is actually, so the Weatherman is canon in Wolf Games lore. There was a GIF that came out, I believe, I don't know when it was. It was in 2022,
Yeah.
that featured the Weatherman
Was it
walking
pre-farmer
through the farm.
pre-farmer
It
reveal,
was,
right?
no, it was after.
Okay, it
I
was.
think it was after, yeah, like the
Okay.
weatherman was walking through the farm and, like stuck his finger in his mouth, put it out to kind of feel the air, how the wind was blowing.
Yeah.
And then he like walked through the farm and then at the end he like released the weather balloon. And I think
Ah,
but that GIF is my farmer, is my weather man.
I
So
like it. Hey,
so I just from there I kind of took on the role of the weatherman and I started creating these animated GIFs for weather forecasts, just kind of funny things for on the
cool.
farm. And they're on my Twitter page if you like scroll back a bunch. I haven't done any in a while, but
Sure. I don't think I've
yeah,
ever seen them. That's cool.
yeah, there's a bunch of them. Like when yeah, it was just random like little funny things, just trying to have fun
Yeah.
with the community and engage the community at the time with
Yeah.
that persona. And so it's kind of just grown from there. Like I've gone less weather forecasty and those things to more like data game forecasts, I guess. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Talking about player base, who do you think our player base is?
Man, I mean, just based on like our community, it really seems like we have a lot of variety of players, really. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I know you've had a few people on recently, and just the spread is like from, like there's
Yeah.
some Gen Xers, there's
Yep.
Gen Z, there's basically all ages, and we even have some women in the community, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of disappointed that I don't think any of them are running for Farmhand Council.
Yeah.
And I think it would be important to have that diversity on the council,
Mm-hmm.
in this space particularly. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree.
so I don't know, like, yeah, our player base is just, it just seems like everyone basically. I mean, to
Yeah.
some degree, like my kids are part of the player base, because like they see me play, they
Mm-hmm.
interact, and I know some other guys too, like their kids play peak games. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's an interesting perspective that we're not just, I mean, we are kind of catering to that like crypto degenerate, and I know that's how Wolf Games started,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's where the player base is going to finish.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
we have to be open to what might come and what the player base might become.
Sure.
Yeah,
Especially how fast the space moves too, right?
absolutely. Not as fast lately, but
Yeah.
it's still
Well,
moving.
yeah, and think about during a bull market, which could be right around the corner. I don't know. I think a lot of people are getting their hopes up for sure, which can be
Yeah,
deadly, right?
yeah. I I think I'm just a little bit more grounded in reality
Yeah,
with our current like world situation, and
very
I
true.
find it hard to believe that we're ripe for the bull yet.
Right. Yeah. And like people won't take easy profits because I know I would at this point, right? It's like, the world
It's
is
definitely tempting.
chaotic as hell. Yeah, for sure. It's a lot
Yeah,
more
it would
tempting.
be tempting. Yeah, but at the same time, like, what are we looking at when we talk about profits when the project is essentially down 95%? Like, that means we have a lot of the way to go up before we
Sure.
then take profits.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So I'm kind of like probably gonna ride it to zero if that's where it goes.
Oh yeah, for sure for Wolf Game, yes. For many others, definitely taking profits it would be smart. Or if you jump in quickly and get out quickly on certain coins, I think would probably be that was more my point. Yeah.
Oh
Um
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm
so
less of a trader these days. I'm
sure,
not really
because it's
like
risky.
into
It
that
is.
scene anymore, and I've kind of like staked my bets mostly on Wolf Game at this point, and a few other, I would say, more artists in the space.
Yep.
Because I mean, I'm an artist myself. Like, I just have an
Cool.
appreciation for that aspect of things, and so
Yeah.
there are a few artists out there that I like, and I collect their work. But in terms of pure project, like Wolf Game's pretty much it for me.
Yeah. So there isn't a question of time dedication to the council, right? I mean,
No,
you grind in the game daily. You become
oh my
obsessed.
gosh, Dio.
Yeah.
If you knew like how much time I spend every week just in spreadsheets for Wolf Game, you'd
Yeah.
probably like
I love it.
your head might explode.
No, it's awesome. I love surrounding myself around people like you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So let's talk about we know, we could go through the things that aren't working with Wolf Game. Yes, I feel like it's pretty apparent to many, right? We tend to beat a dead
Yeah.
horse. So
Yeah, the issues are there. Like it's
yeah,
not,
yeah.
yep.
In your mind, what are some of like the strengths that you enjoy or are seeing even in the past to the current set? I know there's not a lot of strengths right now, but can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, like I think, one of the biggest strengths is our community. Like
Yeah.
even though like at times like it can be absolutely bananas in the Discord, like with like one day it can be, all roses and pretty smelling
Yeah.
flowers and whatever, and then the next day it's like absolute chaos, like
It's
FUD up the
bipolar at
wazoo,
its
like
best.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's like complete 180.
Right.
But it's clear that we have a community and that loves the project,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of them are deeply invested, and they're not leaving basically.
Yeah.
Um, so there's that side of it, and then the other side that like kind of has me hopeful is the fact that you know the Valley was released as what they, I put air quotes, full game, but it's obviously not a full game, right? But the foundations of what are in the Valley, in my opinion, are quite strong.
Yeah.
And the team really, I don't want to say they made a mistake building the peak out, because I do think people wanted that sort of casino gambling aspect.
Yeah.
But I think it was a mistake not to continue efforts on the Valley and that strength that they delivered.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would be like, I think the biggest strength is we still have a strong Valley game component that can be built upon and
Mm-hmm.
expanded a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm most looking forward to.
Yeah. What do you love most about Valley?
At this point, I think I've played Valley about as much as I really care to be honest. Like, I'm just sort of continuing the grind because there's nothing else for me to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like I said, the foundations are there. Like, we have there's a risk protocol in the sense that like sheep can collect and they can be looted by wolves at basically any time and for any reason. Like you don't have to be the top ranked sheep with the most resources to get looted. And that's
Mm-hmm.
been proven like time and time again. And then there's the even more risky protocol of breeding the sheep,
Yep.
which I mean it doesn't cost a lot, but in terms of wool, but it does cost.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a risk. And especially in my case, when, I've been rated like 40% of my breeds.
Sure.
And, the numbers show that barns only get rated like less than 2% of the time or something.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a big difference there.
Yeah.
Um, so for me, I'm certainly feel like I'm playing a pretty risky game, and I understand that other games are risky, but this feels like an actual video game,
Yeah.
versus like if you go back to like the Risky Pouch game, for instance, or the original uh, Wolf game on the blockchain, where it was more about the minting kind of game,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's nice to see that we're getting an actual game that you can play
Yeah.
and
Way ahead of the
visualize.
space. Way ahead of the space. And there's so many people
Absolutely.
that just don't get that. And it is amazing what the Shep and team have already created. And I would agree that the foundation is very strong. I know you spoke to,
Hmm.
that there's some big holders out there that have great points, right? That like, hey, it's not worth it because, people aren't even spending wool and this is ridiculous. And you would make the argument that you are spending wool, especially in the valley, and it may not be to that level of the huge holders, right? So I really do think you appeal to
Right.
that smaller grinder, right?
Well, and the key thing is how many of the larger holders are actually spending wool to do what they do in the valley, because some of them don't really
Mm-hmm.
play either. And that's not a dig on them. I mean, the game in itself
Yep.
I think our player base in the game has shrunk quite a bit because, it's pretty stale at this point. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't blame anybody for taking a break. I mean, if you need a break, that's fine. I
Yeah.
just know for me personally with my bag, I have to grind if I want to strive for any economic dominance later.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think, every holder, every game player is important. But I definitely hope more of these larger holders play more, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what's going to make the game good is more activity.
Yeah. Yeah. There definitely needs to be some balance there for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
What direction do you believe Wolf Games should take in the coming year, considering the evolving demographics of its players?
yeah. I mean, there's some things I'd love to see. I'd love to be able to just have like an app on my phone that I can play Wolf Game on instead
Mm-hmm.
of being tied to the computer.
Mm-hmm.
It would certainly make some things a lot easier. There's other ideas too. Like I'd love to see a more of, I think I've said it before, like I've called it like wolfgame.tv,
Yeah.
where we can see some of these things happening in real time, like when there's a barn raid or somebody
Mm-hmm.
decides they're pissed off and they're gonna loot a bunch of sheep. Like it'd be
Mm-hmm.
great to like have a way to like encapsulate that and really see it in real time happening.
Yeah.
I think that it would just make the game so much more interactive,
Mm-hmm.
and I hope that the team really pushes for more of these social opportunities.
Sure.
Um, Maybe not like player versus player, but maybe some community versus community kind of situations, and
Mm-hmm.
those would all be like really nice things. Um,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, though, they have to do something, and right now it's just a waiting game. Um, I'm pretty open to whatever they have for us, and I'm just ready to experience it basically after 10 months of playing the Valley.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
I think
agree.
that's really my point is I'm just ready. Like I'm ready for whatever they have,
Sure.
but I don't think they're ready. That's the thing. So
Yeah. When you talk about some of the risks, right, that we could bring into the game, anything that's on your mind? I know you typically like to play pretty cautious and you're like, "Whoa, we don't want too many risks here, right? I've been grinding this
yeah,
whole damn time. I can't risk it."
yeah, and
Obviously, yeah. Sorry, what were you say?
oh, I was gonna say like you just reminded me like part of my risk tolerance really comes from not being involved in the early games and being rewarded for the early games, right? So I wasn't a guy that won 500,000 woolen pouches or anything, like I
Mm-hmm.
bought all my pouches. So I guess it has like a real money value to me. And I'm not saying that it
Yeah.
doesn't have a money value to someone who won those rewards either. I just feel like it's different.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because it's hitting your wallet when you're purchasing, right? But then the
Yeah.
people who have the pouches or they say, "Listen, I've been grinding for 2 years. Maybe not playing the game every day, but I've been taking the risks of, playing risky game and staking an alpha game and trying to add content with these alpha wolves in order to increase the chances of their alpha team winning." So yeah, you could
Yeah,
definitely see both
absolutely.
sides there for sure. But I
Yes.
think what
Yeah.
you talked about, like, people spending money, it is a different psychological effect, on the person. And I think obviously we go back to players are very invested, almost to a
Yes.
point where
Yes.
you're, yeah, the normal human being would be like, what the hell are you doing? Right?
I think most normal like humans would be kind of shocked even at the level of investment I'm at, and I'm not even like a big holder like some of these other guys. And so
Sure.
I
Yeah.
actually like have a ton of respect for these guys because they have such high conviction
Yeah.
in the game and the risk that they're taking with those funds, even to
Sure.
be putting it on this space in this way is
Yeah.
yeah, I mean I have respect for that, and I can personally only go so far basically.
Sure. Yeah.
And I hope it plays out for everyone because I mean, and I hope we have a great time doing it. That's really what I'm after.
Yeah, yeah, definitely bringing the fun back for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you just
And I
want
think there's a lot
you
of
want
factors to
action.
that. I do. Yeah. I'm ready like for whatever is going to be next basically.
Yeah,
So,
so you're like, just give me something that I can
yeah.
be positive about, and then I can rip apart and really dig my teeth into, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Like I guess I'm ready. I want to get my sheep teeth on something new.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe it's
I'll,
time for a wolf here pretty soon.
sure, man. If the alpha stays that
Yeah.
way, you might be led into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Thinking about some rapid fire questions here. All right.
Sure.
So give me an unexpected fact about yourself.
Hmm. Unexpected fact. Oh man, I don't know. I mean, we talked a little bit before. I mean, I've essentially been playing video games for 40 years. So I cut my teeth on the original Nintendo. Those games were not easy. Um, I
Yeah.
play some of those now with my son, and he's just like he's quite good at games in general, but
Yeah.
he really struggles with some of those things. So
Sure.
yeah, I don't
They're
know.
so
That's
basic too, and you're like, why
yeah.
is this happening? Yeah.
Well, they just like I think they just like sum up kind of like who I am and the fact that I'm willing to be disciplined and I
Mm-hmm.
grind hard until the job is done.
Cool. I love
Like
that.
that's kind of like I guess that's even like my pitch for Farmhand Council, is like I am just disciplined and I am going to grind until the job is done for me there.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah.
If the council was a sports team, what position would you play and why?
Oh, I think I'd probably be kind of like I would probably chalk up what we do on the council as like a maybe an assistant coach, where
Mm-hmm.
we're helping the players. I would view the players as like the actual team, right? Who's making the game, maybe the devs and the designers and those kind of guys. Where, the head coach is going to be Goose and G Funk there. They're going to be at the top kind of figuring out what is actually happening, right? And they're going to be sending that down to the quarterback or whatever sport you want to,
Yeah.
talk about. But so I kind of view like Farmhand Council, we're kind of like assistant coaches, and
Hmm.
we're going to be interacting with some aspect of the team and helping them to understand what they can do better to encourage kind of like the fan base and bring what the fan base wants.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Well
that's kind of
said.
how I would view like our Farmhand Council role.
Yeah. I love the creativity.
Yeah.
Discuss a high pressure situation you've faced and your key learnings.
Oh man. So I'm not one for not taking on challenges, and I so I guess it was this year. This year I took on the challenge of coaching a 12-year-old girls basketball team, like a competitive girls basketball team. And I'd never coached basketball before.
Mm-hmm.
And to step into that role was is kind of crazy. And I know basketball fairly well, but I never really played it. I'm more like a fan of the
Mm-hmm.
sport.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and not only did I jump into this role, but I didn't have any assistant coaches. So I literally didn't know what I was doing. And so I took like the same basically what you see from me in Wolf Game is what I applied to that role. And I spent the time, I studied, and I helped coach these players, and they had a phenomenal season.
Hmm.
And these were actually like I don't want to give too much away, but like the team settled on the name the Mighty Ducks because they
Mm-hmm.
were a group of like ragtag girls who had never played together before and of varying skill levels playing at a very competitive level.
Hmm.
And they came together and we made it all the way to tournament championship and ended up losing by 2 points in the end.
Wow. Yeah.
And the team we played was a club team that had been playing together for many years.
Hmm.
And so just that experience of helping these girls really teach them fundamentals of the game and how to play together, how to
Yeah.
work together, was a challenge. But I mean, I feel like I was rewarded more than anything from
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
And that was just so, I mean, such a challenging experience. And the amount of time that I put in was so disproportionate.
Right. It's very thankless,
But
right?
yeah, it really was. But it took a few months for me to actually realize like how valuable that experience was for me
Mm-hmm.
as a person, and investing in those kids was so important.
Sure.
And I still, even, 6 months later, have their parents like texting me at times, asking if I'm going to coach again, if like,
Yeah.
because their kids just really enjoyed the experience. And yeah, and I'm just really glad that I was able to challenge myself in that way,
Mm-hmm.
and come off and give those kids a really positive experience
Yeah.
through a very difficult season where, we really only had 7 players on our team, and there were some injuries, and there were some games where we only played with 5 players.
Sure.
So
Yeah, it really kind of relates to Wolf Game, I think, and the Farmhands Council working together, not really knowing each other that well,
mhm,
but willing to learn, right? And to work
absolutely.
together. And that age group, that 12-year-old, is super important to teach them the fundamentals. I mean, there's so many people who have their kids in sports that are at that level, and it's so competitive that it just ruins the
It's
sport, right? So
it really does. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And we had some parents like thrown out of the gym at
Oh
times.
yeah,
Not from
yeah,
our team, not from our team. Our team was fantastic in that
sure.
way, but
Yeah, I'd have a
it's
hard
just
time
sad to
holding
see
back.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to see that. And I think it was like instrumental for me at the time too. Was This is a little bit of a tangent, but was I think I was watching Ted Lasso at the same time, and so I was just so inspired by
That's
by
funny.
that coaching style, and so I really
Yeah.
brought a lot of that
Cool.
fun into it, and it was just a blast. Yeah.
Very cool. All
But
right, let's
what I was gonna
I'm
say,
sorry.
what everybody doesn't see is like the 25 or 30 hours a week I
Oh,
spent on building practice plans and all
nobody
that,
sees it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Nobody
Nobody
sees
sees it.
that stuff.
Talking to
That was the real
yourself.
challenge.
Yep.
Yep,
Punching
that was the real
yourself and
challenge.
right. Hey,
Yeah.
but but that also is what leads to success, is that grind. The
Yeah.
constant
Yeah.
grind, right? And only you know it for sure, or somebody
I'm
who's been in the same shoes.
yeah, I'm and that's what I do. I'm just a grinder. I just
Yeah.
grind and grind and grind.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about criticism that
Yeah.
you might have received that has contributed to your growth.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like the biggest thing that I can get at times, and has been a really like growth point for me, is being less of like I guess like a robot personality, because I do tend to be very analytical and to the
Mm-hmm.
point, um, very strong like logic, and
Yeah.
kind of hardwired that way. And
Uh-huh.
so I can sort of get lost a little bit in the emotional and social side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of those things that I find in Discord is really important, and even in the community at large, is really trying to step back and show like that I'm not just like a data guy. Like I I mean the data is how I guess I push my emotions to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to figure out like how to say that right. Like
Yeah, I mean,
it's
yeah, but you would rather argue with somebody not to an emotional standpoint. Like you want somebody to argue the facts with you and the data. You
yes.
know, you're a C in the disc analysis. I don't know if you've heard of the disc analysis, but there's D, who's dominant, I influencer, S is steady relator, and you're a C. So I would say you as a steady relator, and a C, which is compliant and like very data driven, and like, engineer, attorney. If you're going to be pitched an idea, you need to see the numbers and the specifics. Where
Yeah,
somebody
that's
like, yeah, that's just your personality type. That's how you're wired. right?
Yeah, it allows me to imagine the whole picture
Sure.
instead of, so like if you give me some of that data, then I can figure out like, okay, well, what is the whole picture going to look like?
Yeah. And that's,
And then I build that basically
yeah.
because I'm trying to understand the world in this case, Wolf Game or
Mm-hmm.
whatever happens to be. That's kind
Yeah.
of how I tend to operate.
Yeah. And that's part of being a vital player on the team. We all need that. I don't do that. I'm more that D dominant, like, oh, I'm just going to freaking, run as fast as I can and just, I'm going to learn the hard way and do this and do that. And, and it's like, I don't want to think anymore. I just want to do it. But there's a lot of power in that caution of taking a step back and being like, okay, here are all the facts. Let's get them down. Let's build the spreadsheet. Let's build the engine, right? And
Yes.
yeah, and see it come to fruition. So that's great. And what would you say a common misconception about you would be in the community?
Oh, I don't know. I'm trying to think. I'm not sure. Like, I try and interact as much as I can. Like you mentioned before, I'm pretty
Yeah.
introverted, so a lot of times I don't really know what to say to people. I think I'm better like if we're actually having a conversation, but when I
Mm-hmm.
have to type out words, it's like a really different thing. And so
Yeah.
I think maybe misconception is like I think sometimes my words can be twisted
Sure.
when I type them up.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you actually have a conversation with me, it's a lot more clear, I think,
Mm-hmm.
how I stand and when you hear my tone and how I talk about things and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think sometimes that really gets lost with typing.
Sure.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm in that same boat. I'm like, it would take me an hour to sit down and really formulate my thoughts rather than being like, let's just hop on a call and just
Right. Yeah.
get this done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Interesting, dude. Let's go into a little bit of a out of the box question. Imagine
Sure.
you have the power to predict one future event in Wolf Game with absolute certainty. What event would you foresee, and how would you use this knowledge to benefit the game and its community?
Sure. Yeah. Like if you guys want like a forecast, I mean, I've said some of this in the past, especially like when we were working on the removing the wool burns,
Mm-hmm.
I said that there was going to be a lot of pain for sheep because wolves were going to be more active. And I think that that is going to continue unless the team does something in the immediate future.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to know like what they have in their pipeline. But I think we're going to continue to see wolves very active, the ones that do play. And, if at any point, like more wolves decide to be active, there's going to be a lot more pain for sheep. And I think that's kind of like where we started, actually. We're just kind of going full circle here
Mm-hmm.
is, um, it's going to become difficult for those really small players to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not difficult, but it's going to be more costly, right? And it's not going to make a lot of sense why they're doing it. And it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make a lot of sense now anyways,
Yeah.
like because with the resources really not being valuable, it's it's just kind of a hard sell. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, in the immediate, I would say like we're really looking at kind of a really grindy game, and as wolves continue to loot sheep and that lootable chops continues to go down, the game becomes more grindy
Mm-hmm.
overall,
Mm-hmm.
and becomes more difficult to manage because we're collecting and claiming sheep more often, which means sheep are using more energy for less resources. And
Mm.
it becomes more time consuming to manage that
Yeah.
for a player like me. Um, and that's definitely been like my experience so far, but my
Mm-hmm.
expectation is that that's going to continue.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I hope we don't lose these small players.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm hoping that we can find a balance basically.
Yeah.
But I
Because you
don't
don't
know
want
what
it
that
to
balance
lead.
is.
Yeah. And you don't want it to lead to exhaustion, right?
Well, I think we're there. I think we're at the exhaustive point. Maybe not for wolves, right? Because they kind of had this dormant phase up
Mm-hmm.
until about, I think it was like 4 or 5 weeks ago when the burns were removed.
Yeah,
They were in sort of a more dormant phase of the game.
sure.
And so maybe we're going to see that kind of flip a little bit, and we might see more sheep become dormant.
Yeah.
But we might not, because not everybody looks at the data and whether it's, a positive EV to be
Mm-hmm.
collecting with sheep. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but there is definitely like a lot of frustration in
Yeah,
the Discord at times with, being looted for, you know, 20 chops or
sure.
15, or,
Yeah.
what's going to happen if it becomes five, right? Like,
Yeah.
how is that going to make people feel, like,
Mm-hmm.
and, how are players going to respond? I would say if and when that does happen,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Because you would think that that would lead to, okay, structures are now going to go up and bath prices, there's going to be a demand for bath prices. But again, there's so many exhausted players currently. They're just going, screw this. I'm not going to play the game anymore. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope that
Yeah.
doesn't happen, but it
Yep.
feels like that's the direction things are headed. And I think it's kind of doom and gloom. And, um, but we just don't know what the team has planned
Mm-hmm.
and how soon it's coming and how soon they might address
Yeah.
at least a few of these things.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So,
communication
I
is going to
mean,
be very important.
yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, like we haven't. I mean, we do have the updates channel now, but
Yeah.
I still don't think it's like there's enough communication happening between the team um, and the community, and I hope that being on the Farmhand Council will kind of help alleviate that.
Mm-hmm.
I know we won't be at liberty to say certain things, but at least we can offer some more optimism that we
Mm-hmm.
know things are coming and things won't always be this way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Rather
Yeah.
than it just coming from Za and Term and Bry, maybe because they keep saying, guys, wait, it's not what it seems. But again, that only can get you so far, right? Before people just exit out.
I think that's where we
Weatherman.
are too. It's
Yeah.
just people have
Yeah.
heard enough of that. Just wait, it's coming.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah, they want
I
action.
think people are just burned out on that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Weatherman, what's something you want to leave the voters with as a last part here?
Yeah, I would just say, like, I have a view on the game that I don't think a lot of players have. I don't think a lot of players have played as much as I have and grinded as hard as I have. I understand all of the perspectives, and that's because of the data that I've put in the spreadsheets and the things that I've tracked. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we didn't even talk about like different experiments that I've tried in the game, which is a
Mm-hmm.
whole nother can of worms, and some of it's kind of funny. But I just think that perspective is really needed on the council, and we really need somebody who understands the game and recognizes the patterns that have played out over the 10 months,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever the team is doing, um, someone to understand what new patterns might emerge and be able to give that team feedback before it actually happens.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
forecaster. The
Yeah,
weatherman.
exactly.
That's
Yeah, I
it,
want to.
man.
Yep, that's it.
That is a perfect name for you. It's really starting to grow some legs, that name. I like it.
Yeah, it seems like it. I feel like I'm growing into it for sure. Yeah.
It started as one thing, but it's morphing. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely turned into something else. I think I'm just happy to be in the community and to be like going through this journey with everybody. And it is quite a journey.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's not over. And I want to be a part of the future of it and helping guide the game um, for every player. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well said, my man. Well said.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Dude, I appreciate you for coming on. Again, stepping outside of that comfort zone. That's what's important. And the candidates need to step outside of their comfort zone. This is going to be challenging. This is going to literally come down to the last couple votes. It's going to be exciting to see what the team has for this process. But yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope you gained some amazing value from the Weatherman. I think he's got some amazing points. I love that he's a man of the people and he's data driven. I think that that's something the council could use for sure. So, hey everyone, what is up? It is Digital Optimist here. I just want to say thank you so much for joining us on Beyond the Den. Quick favor to ask, hit that subscribe button. When you hit that subscribe button, that's going to allow me to attract top tier guests to provide you with the most value possible. Give me a follow over on X at Digital Optimist.